All right, how long do we want to count until the shitstorm hits? This is from USA Powerlifting, posted today. They are banning trans people straight up. So this, there's been a lot of controversy around trans people competing for a few reasons. Someone who is born female who takes testosterone and is still competing against females is at an advantage. It's essentially steroids. Someone who is born biologically male and transitions to female to compete against females is still at an advantage. So maybe the issue is, someone born male can't compete against biological females, but someone born female who transitions can compete against males. I don't know. I don't know the answers. What I do know is that this is actually in contrast to a lot of what we have seen. A lot of organizations have allowed biological males to compete against biological females. So someone who transitions to being female. And one of the arguments presented is that taking androgen blockers and transitioning will actually weaken the male. However, Joe Rogan has also pointed out that when it comes to issues like MMA, if you develop as a male, you're still going to have much more, you're going to have a huge advantage. Even if you're on blockers, he said, men have bigger hands, bigger joints. They're going to have more strike force. Even if their muscle mass, shrinks or goes down, they still have more bone density, more collagen. So let's read what USA Powerlifting says. USA Powerlifting is an inclusive organization for all athletes and members who comply with its rules, policies, procedures, and bylaws. USA Powerlifting is not a fit for every athlete and for every medical condition or situation. Simply, not all lifters are eligible to compete in USA Powerlifting. USA Powerlifting is a national affiliate of the International Powerlifting Federation, adopted and follows the policies as defined by the IPF Medical Committee, which impact the participation of transgender individuals in events sanctioned by USA Powerlifting. Two areas of policy impact such participation. The first has to do with the use of testosterone or other androgens commonly used to assist in transition from female to male. By virtue of the anabolic nature of these compounds, they are not allowed, nor is therapeutic use exemption granted for such use for anyone. This applies to any and all medical conditions which might be treated through use of androgens. Any and all. They're not just saying transgender, but they are bringing it up in their transgender participation policy. One of the big arguments, there's a story that goes around all the time of a trans man. This is someone born female transitioning to male, taking testosterone and not being allowed to compete against biological males, which they want. Many people confuse the story because they believe it's someone born male competing with females. That's not true. That's not the case. This story is about an individual, I believe their name is Mac Biggs, I don't remember. But essentially people are arguing, if a female takes testosterone, it's effectively taking steroids. It's basically the same thing, and they're going to have massive strength advantages in wrestling against biological females, and thus they want separation. So this is basically what they're outlining. And again, they're pointing out that no matter what the medical condition is, you can't compete if you're taking androgens. Now, this is another issue when it comes to male to female, because their argument is there's just natural advantages. They say, the second area involves the participation of male to female competitors. Through analysis, the impact of maturation in the presence of naturally occurring androgens as the level necessary for male development, significant advantages are had, including but not limited to increased body and muscle mass, bone density, bone structure, and connective tissue. These advantages are not eliminated by the reduction of serum androgens, such as testosterone, yielding a potential advantage in strength sports such as powerlifting. I also want to point out, women are more prone to leg injuries than men and hip injuries. I've been a skateboarder most of my life. Started skateboarding right about the time I was about to turn 14. And my understanding, I could be wrong, I'm not a doctor, is that women suffer injuries to their legs in skateboarding and other sports significantly more often because of their wider hips, which means if someone goes through puberty as a female and they develop wide hips, they will be more prone to injury. They're more susceptible. So especially when it comes to certain, like MMA, for instance, men with their more narrow hips, something called the Q angle, the angle of the femur based on the wideness of the hips when they stand straight, men are less likely to be injured, but it's also about bone density, connective tissues, collagen, etc. The IPF added acceptance of the International Olympic Committee guidelines on inclusion of transgender individuals in competition. However, the IOC guidelines also allow sports to determine the impact on fair play through such inclusion. The IPF Medical Committee while respecting the rights of those who choose to transition, has been consistent in its opinion that use of testosterone and participation of male to female transgender athletes in our sport compromises fair play. While other sports and activities and other powerlifting organizations may choose a different interpretation of the impact on their respective competitive activities, USA Powerlifting will continue to follow the policies as defined by the IPF Medical Committee. If or when the membership of USA Powerlifting through the processes of governance as defined in the Constitution and bylaws of our federation chooses to address these policies, their interpretation and adherence to them may change. Okay. Basically, what it sounds like they're saying in a very verbose way is that you cannot use androgens. Okay, so they say, simply not all powerlifters are eligible to compete in USA Powerlifting. Plain and simple. But there are interesting debates to be had in this issue. Many people bring up that some women are naturally have more testosterone than other women, and thus they'll probably do better. Some women are very tall and very strong and have more muscle mass. What's the difference? Well, I guess the natural aspect of it. When it comes to sports, I suppose one of the arguments would be to find the best of natural human development. And thus, if you have somebody who is taking testosterone, it seems that they're going to be stronger. So I don't believe they explicitly say anywhere in here, straight up, no transgenders allowed. But it looks like what they're saying is, by virtue of the anabolic nature of these compounds, they are not allowed. Thus, female to male powerlifters will not be allowed if they are taking, hormones to transition. But I gotta wonder, would that apply to someone who has already transitioned and then stops taking it? At what point are they allowed in? If you guys are familiar with powerlifting and how steroids are regulated and androgens are regulated in this, you may know better than I am, because maybe it may be that if you've ever done it, if you ever gained an advantage through taking these things, you'll not be allowed. But I don't know. I find the whole thing rather confusing. If a man takes steroids, is it possible, like a year later, to recognize that he has? Will he retain those advantages? I just don't understand. But it looks like they go on to basically say that because, I guess they mention that these advantages are not eliminated by a reduction of serum androgens such as testosterone, yielding a potential advantage in strength sports such as powerlifting. So it looks like they say, it looks like they don't explicitly say they're banning people. The issue of trans rights in sports has been particularly difficult to deal with. And there's one other story that I do want to bring up as well in this, because I think it's important we talk about this. But we also have this issue, this is from Pink News, trans campaigner Sarah McBride harassed by anti-trans feminists on video. Apparently, the rift between the trans community, feminists, and the left is getting really, really bad. And I can only assume that with the transgender powerlifting thing, there's going to be a massive backlash. And now we have this story. Apparently, a woman who goes by the name Posey Parker stormed into a room. It says, UK-based Parker interrupted a private meeting McBride was part of in the US Capitol on Wednesday morning, heckling the trans campaigner and telling her that the entire LGB community, how much, she said, tell the entire LGB community how much you hate lesbians, Sarah. So there has been an increasing rift between the lesbian community and the trans community because lesbians feel like the trans community is telling young women who are lesbians that they're actually men, they're actually trans men, and they should transition. And so it's coming to a point now where these people are being called like extremists. I don't know. I think they call the feminist lesbians extremists in this article. They say, Pink News understands that the incident occurred shortly after a meeting held by HRC's Parents for Transgender Equality Council with members of U.S. Congress. HRC is campaigning for the Trump administration to pass the Equality Act, which would provide better legal protections for LGBT plus people in the U.S. In the nearly 2-minute long video, Parker and Julia Long, a lesbian, I'm not going to say that word because that's considered a slur. I kid you not. This is how I just don't even know what's going on anymore. If on Twitter you refer to someone as this certain phrase, which if I say could be construed as a slur, it's considered targeting women, I guess. People have been banned for using this. And it's I just don't know. I just don't even know. I don't even know. Because you're offending feminists. You offend a feminist no matter what in this story. Using a phrase the trans inclusive feminists use against the people who don't like trans people is considered a slur, which people have been banned for. She said, Parker says, I want to know why this person is advocating to remove the safety for women and girls. And yeah. So this article, typically the mainstream LGBT plus community is at odds with the feminist and lesbian community who do not believe that people who are born biologically male can transition. And typically it's the, I just don't even know anymore. I had no idea what's going on. So yeah. Sarah McBride, this kind of harassment is the reality for far too many transgender people. You know what? I have no idea where this is going to go. I have no idea how it's solved. But the one thing I can say is that it's not definitively one way or the other. The main story I want to talk about was this, simply because this is going to be huge. This is going to be big. We're probably going to see a bunch of stories about this, and they're probably going to get torn apart in the media. We'll see what happens. Stick around. I got another video coming up in a few minutes. I'll see you then.